Welcome to the Mind Shelf, the place where we explore the architecture of our minds to build a better life. Have you ever felt the sting of failure? That sinking feeling in your stomach when a project collapses, a goal remains out of reach, or a well-laid plan shatters into a million pieces. For most of us, failure feels like a final destination, a brick wall at the end of a promising road. We're taught to avoid it, fear it, and hide it when it inevitably happens. But what if this entire perspective is wrong? What if failure isn't the wall but the doorway? What if every setback, every mistake, and every moment of falling short wasn't an endpoint, but a powerful high-octane fuel source waiting to be ignited? In this deep dive, we are going to dismantle our fear of failure piece by piece and rebuild our relationship with it. We will explore the psychology behind why it hurts, the mental frameworks used by the world's highest achievers, and a practical step-by-step process to alchemize your missteps into momentum. By the end of this journey, you won't just be unafraid of failure. You'll learn to actively seek the lessons it provides, turning it into the most potent catalyst for your success. Part 1. The Anatomy of Failure. Why it hurts and why we run from it. Failure is a universal human experience, yet it is the most privately held pain. From a toddler falling while learning to walk to an entrepreneur watching their business fold, the emotional signature is remarkably similar. A cocktail of shame, disappointment, anger, and fear. To understand how to transform failure, we must first dissect it. We must look it in the eye and understand the deep-seated psychological and evolutionary reasons why it holds such power over us. The evolutionary hangover, survival and social standing. Our brains are in many ways running on ancient software. For our ancestors roaming the savannah, failure wasn't just an inconvenience. It was often a death sentence. Failing to find food meant starvation. Failing to spot a predator meant being eaten. Failing to maintain social cohesion within the tribe meant exile, a fate almost as certain as death. This negativity bias, a term coined by psychologists Paul Rosen and Edward Roisman, is our brain's tendency to register and dwell on negative stimuli more readily than positive ones. This primitive wiring persists today. When you fail a major exam, your brain doesn't just register, "I got a bad grade." It can trigger a primal fear response. I am not smart enough. I won't get into a good college. I won't get a good job. My survival is at risk. While rationally absurd, this subconscious cascade is powerful. Similarly, public failure, a presentation that bombs, a business that closes, a public mistake taps into that ancient fear of social exile. In the modern world, this translates to fear of judgment, loss of status, and damage to our reputation. We fear being cast out of our professional or social circles. This fear of social judgment is so potent that it often paralyzes us from even trying, creating a self-imposed prison where the fear of failing is worse than failure itself. The ego's fragile grasp, tying identity to outcomes. One of the most significant reasons failure is so painful is because we conflate the event with our identity. We don't just think, I did a failure, and we think, I am a failure. This is the critical distinction between a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, a concept popularized by Stanford psychologist Carol Dweck. A fixed mindset assumes that our character, intelligence, and creative ability are static givens which we can't change in any meaningful way. Success is the affirmation of that inherent intelligence or talent. Consequently, failure becomes a direct indictment of your core self. It's not just that your strategy was flawed, it's that you are flawed. The ego, whose job is to protect our self-concept, perceives this as a mortal threat. To protect itself, it will do anything to avoid failure, including self-sabotage, refusing to take on challenges, and blaming external factors when things go wrong. A growth mindset, on the other hand, thrives on challenge and sees failure not as evidence of unintelligence, but as a heartening springboard for growth and for stretching our existing abilities. In this framework, your abilities can be developed through dedication and hard work. The event of failure is separated from the identity of the person. My business idea failed is a statement about an outcome. I am a failure is a judgment on your entire being. This cognitive fusion between action and identity is the root of failure's deepest pain. The goal, as we will explore, is to sever this tie. The cognitive distortions of defeat. When we are in the immediate aftermath of a failure, our thinking becomes distorted. Our rational brain, the prefrontal cortex, is often hijacked by our emotional brain, the amygdala. This leads to several cognitive traps. Catastrophizing. This is the tendency to blow things out of proportion. A single failed sales call becomes "I'm terrible at sales and will be fired." A rejected manuscript becomes "I'll never be a published author." We take a single event and project it into a disastrous permanent future. All or nothing thinking, black and white thinking. We see things in absolute terms. If you're not a complete success, you must be a total failure. There is no middle ground, no room for a valiant effort with valuable lessons learned. This binary view eliminates the possibility of learning from nuance. Overgeneralization. We take one negative event as a never-ending pattern of defeat. I failed at this diet just like I fail at everything. This distortion takes the specific data point of one failure and uses it to paint a broad, bleak picture of our entire life and capabilities. Emotional reasoning. We mistake our feelings for facts. I feel like a loser, therefore I am a loser. Our emotions are powerful, but they are not accurate reporters of reality. They are signals, not gospel truth. Understanding these psychological underpinnings is the first step toward disarming failure. It's not a personal failing to feel the sting of defeat. It's a deeply human, evolutionarily ingrained response. By recognizing these patterns, the evolutionary hangover, the ego's grip, and the cognitive distortions, we can begin to observe them with distance rather than being consumed by them. We can start the process of reframing, moving from seeing failure as a verdict to seeing it as data. Part 2. The Great Reframe. Shifting your perception of failure. The difference between people who are crushed by failure and those who are fueled by it lies not in the nature of their failures, but in the nature of their perception. The event itself is neutral. It is the meaning we assign to it that determines its impact. This section is about the deliberate, conscious act of changing that meaning. A process of mental alchemy that turns the lead of defeat into the gold of growth. Embracing the growth mindset, your brain is a muscle. As introduced by Carol Dweck, the growth mindset is the single most powerful tool in your reframing arsenal. It is the bedrock belief that your abilities are not fixed, but can be developed. This isn't just positive thinking. It's grounded in the science of neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new neural connections throughout life. When you adopt a growth mindset, the entire equation of failure changes. Failure shifts from being a judgment to being information. It's no longer a verdict on your abilities, it's data on your current strategy. Thomas Edison, who famously made thousands of unsuccessful attempts to invent the light bulb, perfectly embodied this. He was quoted as saying, "Swant, I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work." Each failure was simply a data point that guided him closer to the solution. Effort becomes the hero of the story, not talent. In a fixed mindset, the need for effort suggests a lack of natural talent. In a growth mindset, effort is the very path through which ability is forged. Therefore, a failure that results from a lack of effort is a simple problem to solve. Apply more effort. A failure that happens despite immense effort is even more valuable. It's a sign that you are pushing the boundaries of your current abilities, which is the only way to expand them. Challenges become opportunities, not threats. A person with a fixed mindset avoids challenges to avoid the risk of failure and thus the risk of being exposed as lacking. A person with a growth mindset actively seeks challenges because they understand that this is the zone of growth. They see a difficult task as a chance to get stronger, smarter, and more capable. How to cultivate a growth mindset. Change your language. Pay attention to your self-talk. Replace "I can't do this" with "I can't do this yet." Replace "I'm a failure" with "this strategy failed." Words create your reality. Adding yet opens the door to future possibility. Focus on process, not just outcome. Instead of setting a goal like, I will get a promotion, set process-based goals like, I will take on one new leadership responsibility each month and actively seek feedback on my performance. This shifts your focus from a single high-stakes outcome to a continuous manageable process of improvement. You can succeed at the process even if the ultimate outcome is delayed. Seek and embrace feedback. People with fixed mindsets see feedback as criticism. Those with a growth mindset see it as invaluable information for improvement. Actively ask for constructive criticism from mentors, peers, and managers. Ask, what is one thing I could have done better? Failure as a navigation system. Imagine you're piloting a ship across the ocean. You have a destination in mind, but you know that winds, currents, and storms will constantly push you off course. Do you consider every gust of wind that pushes you a few degrees off track a failure? Of course not. It's expected. Each deviation is simply a signal that you need to make a course correction. You adjust the rudder and continue on your way. Failure works in exactly the same way. It is life's navigation system. It is a feedback mechanism telling you that your current path, strategy, or approach is not working. A failed business venture is not a sign you're a bad entrepreneur. It's feedback that your market hypothesis was wrong, your pricing was off, or your customer acquisition strategy was flawed. A rejected job application isn't a verdict on your worth. It's feedback that your resume needs tailoring, your interview skills need polishing, or that this particular role wasn't the right fit for your skills. A relationship that ends is not a sign you're unlovable. It's painful but powerful feedback on communication styles, compatibility, and personal needs. When you reframe failure as navigational feedback, it loses its emotional charge. It becomes an objective signal for a required adjustment. The key question shifts from, why am I such a failure? To what is this trying to teach me? What course correction is needed? Separating the who from the do. This is the practical application of detaching your identity from the outcome. You are not your results. You are the person who produces the results. Your work, your projects, your attempts, these are all things you do, they are not who you are. A simple but powerful mental exercise is to conduct a post-mortem on a failure as if you were an outside consultant. Analyze the project, not the person. What were the initial assumptions? Which of those assumptions proved to be false? What were the external factors? Market shifts, unexpected events. What were the internal factors? Lack of resources, flawed strategy, poor execution. What systems or processes broke down? By objectifying the failure in this way, you create a psychological distance. You move from the role of the accused to the role of the detective. The detective's job is not to assign blame, but to uncover the truth. And the truth of why something failed is the most valuable fuel you can possibly find. It contains the blueprint for your next, more successful attempt. This reframe is not easy. It requires constant practice and self-awareness. But it is the essential pivot point where failure stops being an anchor that weighs you down and starts being a propeller that pushes you forward. Part 3. The Failure Fuel Framework. A 5-step process from setback to success. Theory and reframing are crucial, but to truly make failure work for you, you need a practical, repeatable process. You need a system to follow when you're in the emotional fog of a setback. This is the Failure Fuel Framework, a 5-step method for systematically extracting every drop of value from a mistake and converting it into forward momentum. Step 1. Acknowledge and decompress the emotional first aid. You cannot analyze a problem logically when you are drowning in the emotion of it. The first step after any significant failure is not to immediately jump into problem solving, but to practice emotional first aid. Ignoring or suppressing the feelings of disappointment, frustration, or shame will only cause them to fester and cloud your judgment later. Permission to feel. Give yourself a specific time-boxed period to feel bad. It's okay to be upset. Tell yourself, for the next 24 hours, I'm allowed to be disappointed. I can vent, be quiet, or do what I need to process this. This prevents you from wallowing indefinitely but honors the natural emotional response. The decompression protocol. Engage in an activity that disconnects you from the failure and allows your nervous system to calm down. This could be intense physical exercise, a long walk in nature, meditation, listening to music, or talking to a trusted friend or family member. Not for advice, but simply to be heard. Self-compassion, not self-criticism. Speak to yourself as you would a dear friend who just experienced the same setback. Would you tell them they were a worthless failure? Or would you offer comfort, perspective, and encouragement? Dr. Kristen Neff, a leading researcher on self-compassion, identifies its three core components. Self-kindness, being gentle with yourself. Common humanity, recognizing that suffering and failure are part of the shared human experience. And mindfulness, observing your negative thoughts without judgment. This initial step is non-negotiable. Trying to bypass the emotional component is like trying to build a house on an unstable foundation. Only once the emotional storm has passed can you move into the logical, analytical phases. Step 2. Analyze and deconstruct the objective post-mortem. Once you have some emotional distance, it's time to become a detective. The goal here is radical honesty, free from blame or justification. Get out a journal or a whiteboard and deconstruct the failure. State the facts, what actually happened. Write it down as a neutral third-party observer would. For example, instead of "I completely bombed the presentation because I'm a terrible speaker," write, "The presentation was scheduled for 10 a.m. During the Q&A, I was unable to answer two key questions from the client. The feedback received afterward noted a lack of data to support my main claims. Identify all contributing factors. Brainstorm every possible reason for the failure, big and small. Separate them into two columns, within my control and outside my control. Within my control. Didn't do enough research, procrastinated on preparation, didn't practice the delivery, made a poor strategic assumption, didn't ask for help. Outside my control. A key stakeholder was in a bad mood. The projector malfunctioned. A competitor launched a surprise product. Apply the 5 whys technique. This is a powerful root cause analysis tool developed by Toyota. Start with the problem and ask why 5 times to get to the core issue. Problem: we missed our sales target. Why? Our conversion rate on sales calls was low. Why? The sales team wasn't effectively handling objections. Why? They hadn't been trained on the new product features. Why? The training was scheduled but postponed due to budget cuts. Root cause: the failure wasn't the sales team's performance, but a systemic issue of deprioritizing training. This level of analysis is where the real gold is found. Step 3. Extract and synthesize, finding the lesson. Analysis gives you the raw data. Extraction is about synthesizing that data into a clear, actionable lesson. This is the most crucial step in creating fuel. A lesson is not a vague platitude like, "I need to work harder." It's a specific, transferable insight. Isolate the core lesson. Look at the root cause you identified. What is the one key takeaway? In the 5 whys example, the lesson isn't, "The sales team needs to try harder." The lesson is, product training is a mission-critical investment, not an optional expense, and must be protected from budget cuts. Frame it as a rule for the future. Turn the lesson into a principle or rule you can apply going forward. Examples: old belief, "I can do it all myself." New rule: for any project larger than X, I will delegate at least 2 major components. Old belief: if I build a great product, customers will come. New rule: I will spend 50% of my time on product development and 50% on marketing and distribution from day 1. Write it down. Physically write down your key lesson. This act solidifies it in your memory and makes it a concrete part of your personal or professional playbook. Step 4. Experiment and iterate. The low-stakes test. You now have a new rule or principle, but it's still just a hypothesis. The next step is to test it in a small, low-stakes environment. A huge mistake people make after a big failure is to try to launch another massive high-stakes project immediately. This is a recipe for repeat disaster. Instead, you need to run small experiments. Define a small, testable action. Based on your new rule, what is the smallest possible action you can take to test it? If your lesson was about delegation, don't immediately hire a full team. Delegate one small, non-critical task to a freelancer or colleague. If your lesson was about customer feedback, don't redesign your whole product. Send a one-question survey to 10 customers. Measure the results. How did the experiment go? Did delegating the small task free up your time and result in a good outcome? Did the customer survey give you a valuable insight? Iterate based on feedback. The result of this small experiment is more data. Use it to refine your new rule. Maybe delegation works, but you need to provide clearer instructions. Maybe customer surveys are good, but direct interviews are better. This loop of experiment, measure, iterate is the engine of progress. Step 5. Execute and integrate, scaling the lesson. Once your small-scale experiments have proven your new hypothesis to be effective, it's time to integrate the lesson fully into your systems and execute on a larger scale. Systematize the new rule. How can you make this new principle a default part of how you operate? If the lesson was about preparation, create a mandatory presentation checklist that you must complete 48 hours before any important meeting. If it was about financial discipline, set up automated transfers to a savings account. Turn the lesson from a conscious effort into an unconscious habit or a rigid system. Apply to the next big goal. Now, armed with a tested and integrated lesson, you are ready to take on the next significant challenge. You are not the same person who failed before. You are wiser, more strategic, and equipped with a proven new approach. You have successfully converted the potential energy of a past failure into the kinetic energy of future success. This 5-step framework transforms you from a passive victim of failure into an active alchemist, capable of systematically turning any setback into a strategic advantage. Part 4. Case Studies in Conversion. Learning from those who mastered failure. Abstract frameworks are useful, but seeing them embodied in the lives of real people makes the lessons visceral and unforgettable. The world's most celebrated figures are often those with the most spectacular failures in their past. They are not successful in spite of their failures. They are successful because of them. They mastered the art of converting setbacks into fuel. Michael Jordan, The Power of Being Cut. It's one of the most famous stories in sports lore. Michael Jordan, widely considered the greatest basketball player of all time, was cut from his high school varsity basketball team. For a young, ambitious teenager, this was a devastating public failure. He went home and cried. The reframe. Instead of interpreting this as "I'm not good enough," Jordan reframed it as "I am not working hard enough." The failure became informational data about the gap between his current skill level and his desired skill level. The fuel, the memory of that failure, became his ultimate motivation. He said, "Whenever I was working out and got tired and figured I ought to stop, I'd just close my eyes and see that list in the locker room without my name on it, and that usually got me going again." He used the emotional pain as a source of energy. The process, he didn't just brood, he enacted a plan. He began waking up early to practice before school. He joined the junior varsity team and dominated, not with bitterness, but with a ferocious desire to improve. He focused on his weaknesses and systematically turned them into strengths. The result, Jordan's career, is a testament to this mindset. Even at his peak, his most famous commercials highlighted his misses. "I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed." He didn't hide his failures. He advertised them as the very foundation of his success. J.K. Rowling, The Benefits of Hitting Rock Bottom, before she created the magical world of Harry Potter. Joanne Rowling's life was, in her own words, a story of failure on an epic scale. Within a few short years, her marriage had ended, she was jobless, and she was a single mother living on state benefits, as poor as it was possible to be in modern Britain without being homeless. She felt like the biggest failure she knew. The reframe. In a famous Harvard commencement speech, she spoke of the benefits of failure. She realized that hitting rock bottom was liberating. She said, failure meant a stripping away of the inessential. I stopped pretending to myself that I was anything other than what I was, and began to direct all my energy into finishing the only work that mattered to me, the fuel. Her failure stripped away her fear of failing again. When you've already lost everything, the risk of trying something audacious feels much smaller. This liberation gave her the focus and determination to finish her manuscript, even while struggling to make ends meet. The process. The Harry Potter manuscript was rejected by 12 different publishing houses. Each rejection was a new failure, a new data point. Instead of giving up, she persisted, using each no to fuel her resolve to find someone who would say yes. She didn't let the feedback of the market dictate the value of her work. She believed in her story and continued to advocate for it. The result? J.K. Rowling became one of the most successful authors in history. Her story is a powerful reminder that failure can be a crucible that burns away distractions, fears, and external expectations, leaving you with a clear vision of what truly matters. Colonel Sanders, success has no age limit. The story of KFC is not one of a young tech prodigy, but of a man who failed at nearly everything for 65 years. Harlan Sanders was a steamboat pilot, a railroad fireman, a lawyer, a career ruined after a courtroom brawl, an insurance salesman and a tire salesman, among other things. He failed at almost all of them. At age 65, he was broke, living off a small Social Security check. His first restaurant venture had failed due to a new interstate highway diverting all his traffic. The reframe. Faced with poverty in his senior years, Sanders didn't see his past as a string of failures, but as a long, winding R&D process. His one success had been a chicken recipe that people loved at his roadside motel. He reframed his situation not as, I'm too old and have failed at everything, but as the one thing I have of value is this recipe. How can I leverage it? The fuel. His dire financial situation was the ultimate motivator. He had nothing to lose. His age, which many would see as a disadvantage, gave him a unique brand of folksy credibility. The process. He took his recipe in his pressure cooker and hit the road. He drove across the country, sleeping in his car, trying to convince restaurant owners to franchise his recipe. He was rejected over 1,000 times. Each rejection was a failure, but he treated it as a simple business transaction. A no simply meant he had to go to the next town, the next restaurant. He was iterating, testing the market one door at a time. The result? Colonel Sanders eventually found his franchisees and built one of the largest and most recognizable fast food empires in the world. His story demolishes the myth that failure is a young person's game, or that there's a point where it's too late. His life proves that the lessons from a lifetime of failures can be the ingredients for a massive success later in life. These stories show us that the principles of turning failure into fuel are universal. Whether in sports, art, or business, the pattern is the same. Acknowledge the pain, reframe the event as information, use the emotion as motivation, and develop a persistent process of iteration and improvement. Part 5. Building Antifragility. Designing a life that thrives on failure. So far, we've discussed how to react to failure. The final, most advanced stage is to move from being resilient, bouncing back from failure, to being anti-fragile, a term coined by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. While the resilient object resists shocks and stays the same, the anti-fragile object gets stronger from them. A wine glass is fragile, it shatters under stress. A plastic cup is resilient, it bends and returns to its shape. But the human immune system is anti-fragile. Exposure to a germ, a stressor, a small failure, makes the entire system stronger and better prepared for the future. How can we design our lives, careers, and mindsets to be anti-fragile, to actually benefit from the inevitable shocks and setbacks of the world? 1. Embrace a portfolio approach to projects and goals. A single all-or-nothing goal is incredibly fragile. If you pour your entire identity and all your resources into one venture, one job application, one business idea, one artistic project, its failure can be catastrophic. An anti-fragile approach is to think like a venture capitalist. A VC invests in a portfolio of 10 companies, knowing that 7 or 8 will likely fail, 1 or 2 might do okay, and 1 might be a runaway success that pays for all the others. In your career, don't just focus on your main job. Cultivate a side hustle. Learn a new and unrelated skill. Build a professional network outside your company or create content online. If you get laid off, a shock to the system, you don't fall to zero. You have other options, skills, and potential income streams that have now become more valuable. In your personal growth, don't just try to build one new habit. Try 3 or 4 small ones simultaneously. Try learning a language, picking up an instrument, and starting a fitness routine. One might not stick, but another might become a lifelong passion. The failure of one habit doesn't derail your entire self-improvement plan. 2. Practice deliberate discomfort and micro-failures. To build a strong immune system, you get vaccinated. You expose it to a small, controlled dose of the virus. To build your failure immune system, you must deliberately expose yourself to small, manageable failures and discomforts. The rejection challenge. A popular exercise is to deliberately seek rejection every day for a month. Ask for a 10% discount on your coffee. Ask a stranger for a ridiculous favor. Ask for a tour of a business's back office. Most of the time, you'll be told no. The goal isn't to get a yes. The goal is to get rejected and realize that you survive. It desensitizes you to the sting of no and makes you bolder when the stakes are real. Learn a skill you're bad at. If you're highly analytical, try learning to paint. If you're a creative, try learning to code. Deliberately entering a domain where you are a beginner forces you to be humble, to make mistakes, and to experience the slow, frustrating process of learning. This builds the growth mindset muscle in a low-stakes environment. 3. Set process-oriented goals, not outcome-oriented goals. An outcome goal is fragile because it is often outside your complete control. Become a New York Times best-selling author is an outcome goal. It depends on agents, publishers, market trends, and luck. If you fail to achieve it, the entire endeavor can feel like a failure. A process goal is anti-fragile because it is 100% within your control. Write for 2 hours every single morning is a process goal. You can succeed at it every single day, regardless of the outcome. Each day you fulfill the process, you get a small win, building momentum and resilience. By focusing on the process, you inevitably get better. The writing improves, the business skills sharpen, the fitness level increases. The desired outcome becomes a byproduct of a successful process, not the sole definition of success. Even if the big outcome never materializes, you still have the skills, discipline, and body of work you built along the way, assets that make you stronger for the next attempt. 4. Build a council of mentors and a strong support system. Failure is isolating. An anti-fragile strategy involves building a robust support network before you need it. Your personal board of directors. Identify 3 to 5 people whose judgment you trust. They could be former bosses, mentors, wise friends, or even historical figures whose biographies you study. When you face a significant failure or a tough decision, mentally or literally consult your board. What would they advise? This externalizes the problem and provides you with different perspectives. Mastermind groups. Join or create a small group of peers in your field who meet regularly to discuss challenges and hold each other accountable. Sharing your failures in a safe, confidential environment robs them of their power. You'll quickly learn that your struggles are not unique, and the collective wisdom of the group can turn a personal failure into a shared learning experience. By actively designing your life with these principles, you move beyond simply coping with failure. You begin to create a system where volatility, randomness, and stress are not just survived, but are harvested for growth, strength, and success. You become antifragile. You learn to not just walk through the fire, but to emerge from it forged into something stronger. We've traveled from the deep psychology of why failure hurts to the practical frameworks that transform it into a powerful catalyst for growth. We've seen through the lives of legends that the path to success is not paved with victories, but with the lessons learned from countless defeats. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is an integral, non-negotiable part of the process. The true failure is not falling down, but choosing not to get back up, choosing not to learn, choosing not to reframe. The next time you face a setback, remember that you are not at a dead end. You are at a fuel station. Acknowledge the feeling, analyze the data, extract the lesson, and use it to power your next great attempt. Thank you for joining us here at the Mind Shelf. If this exploration has resonated with you, subscribe to continue building the mental tools for a more resilient and successful life. Your greatest comeback is waiting for you.